Okay, so you want to open a daycare. You find a bright building, paint animals on the walls, fill the rooms with tiny tables, and enroll 60 children. Each family pays you every month. If the average family pays $2,500, that is $90,000 coming through the door every 30 days. More than $1 million a year. And parents are desperate for spots. Some put their name on wait lists before the baby is even born. This sounds less like a business and more like a printer that converts applesauce into money. It is not. In fact, daycare may be the only business where the customer thinks the price is outrageous, the employees are still underpaid, and the owner can still struggle to make a profit. Everyone looks at the same tuition check and asks the same question: where did all the money go? The answer is hidden inside one rule that controls almost every dollar in the building. A daycare cannot simply add more customers. Every time it adds enough children, it must add another adult. That creates a strange financial staircase, where the ninth child can be less profitable than the eighth. A full center can still have the wrong mix of customers, and one employee calling out sick can shut down an entire room. So before you start picturing passive income and finger painting dividends, you need to understand what you are actually buying. You are not buying a building full of children. You are buying permission to sell a limited number of supervised hours, and permission is expensive. Before the first child arrives, you need a location. It must be close enough to homes or jobs that parents can reach it without turning drop-off into a second commute. It needs safe entrances, parking, outdoor space, bathrooms, sinks, fire exits, secure doors, and rooms that can be separated by age. A cheap building in the wrong place is not cheap. Most parents will not drive 25 minutes in the wrong direction twice a day because your alphabet rug is slightly nicer. Location is part of the product. Then the building has to be approved. Childcare rules vary by state and sometimes by city, but a center may need zoning approval, a childcare license, building and fire inspections, background checks, staff training, health and safety plans, emergency procedures, sanitation systems, secure medication storage, playground compliance, and detailed records for every child and employee. You can sign a lease in January and still spend months paying rent on a building that is legally allowed to care for exactly 0 children. That period is dangerous because the expenses begin before the revenue does. Contractors want money. The landlord wants money. Insurance wants money. The crib company, playground company, security company, software company, and person installing tiny toilets all want money. The toddlers, for once, are the only people not sending you an invoice. A daycare build-out is not ordinary office space. Rooms need the right square footage, doors need controlled access, playgrounds need compliant surfaces and fencing, and infant rooms need safe sleep spaces. One failed inspection can add another month of rent. A home daycare can avoid much of the commercial real estate cost, but the owner usually becomes the teacher, cook, cleaner, administrator, substitute, and person scraping dried oatmeal from a chair at 7:40 at night. The startup bill is smaller. The job description is not. This is the first thing most people misunderstand about daycare. The center does not become valuable because there are children nearby. It becomes valuable when it has the right license, the right rooms, the right staff, and the right ages of children in those rooms at the same time. Demand alone is not enough. If you like seeing where ordinary businesses hide their real economics, subscribe, because daycare is about to get much stranger. Once the doors open, the main source of revenue is tuition. In 2025, the national average annual price of childcare was a little over $13,000, but that number hides enormous differences by state, city, age, schedule, and type of care. Infant care in a major metro can cost far more than preschool care in a smaller town. Full-time care costs more than a few mornings a week. A premium center with longer hours, meals, cameras, enrichment, and newer facilities can charge more than a basic program nearby. But here is the detail that confuses parents and keeps centers alive. You are usually not paying for the days your child physically attends. You are paying for the slot. If your child stays home with a fever, the teacher still came to work. The rent did not shrink. The insurance company did not send a sympathy discount, and the center cannot sell that one empty Tuesday to another family without giving away the permanent spot. The inventory is reserved capacity. That is why many centers charge through vacations, holidays, and ordinary absences. Policies vary, but the logic is the same. A daycare seat is more like an apartment lease than a movie ticket. You pay to keep it available. Tuition is only the first layer. Centers may also charge registration, supply, activity, and late pickup fees. Some offer summer or before and after school programs. Others receive meal reimbursements, grants, state subsidies, pre-K funding, or employer payments for reserved spaces. An employer that helps cover the facility or guarantees demand can remove two major risks. But most independent centers still live or die on monthly tuition. And that brings us to the rule controlling the entire building. Staff to child ratios. Every state sets limits on how many children one adult can supervise, and younger children usually require more adults. The exact rules differ, so let us use a simple example. Imagine your state allows one teacher for every 4 infants. You enroll 4 babies. One teacher, you enroll 8 babies, 2 teachers, then a 9th family calls. They are ready to start Monday. They will pay $2,000 a month. They already love the center. Their deposit is practically jumping out of the checking account. But the 9th baby may require a 3rd teacher. That new child brings in $2,000. A full-time teacher earning $18 an hour costs more than $3,000 a month in wages alone, before payroll taxes, workers' compensation, training, paid time off, or benefits. So the 9th customer can make the infant room less profitable. The room may not recover until the 10th, 11th, and 12th babies enroll, assuming its licensed group size and physical space allow 12. That is the ratio cliff. Revenue rises one child at a time. Labor rises one whole employee at a time. A restaurant can add one more table and spread the kitchen staff across more customers. A software company can sell another subscription for almost no extra cost. A daycare adds one more child and may need another human being in the room for 10 hours a day. This means enrollment does not behave like a smooth line. It behaves like stairs. The profitable place is near the top of each step. The painful place is right after a new teacher is added for only 1 or 2 children. And every classroom has its own staircase. Infants may be 1 adult for every 3 or 4 children. Toddlers might allow more. Preschool rooms may allow far more children per teacher. The rules differ, but the pattern does not. You are not trying to fill one building. You are trying to fill several separate businesses hiding inside one building. The infant room has its own capacity and labor needs. The toddler room has its own. The preschool room has its own. A center can be 90% full overall and still lose money because the empty spaces are in the wrong classrooms. Maybe the preschool room has openings, but every call is from a family with a 6-month-old. You cannot place a baby at a preschool table and call it vertical integration. Maybe the infant room is full, but 3 toddlers age into the next class at once. Now the toddler room needs another teacher, while the infant room suddenly has 3 empty spots. Children do not move through the business according to your spreadsheet. They have birthdays. One birthday can change the legal capacity of a room, the tuition rate, the staffing requirement, and the place where the next opening appears. This is why a long wait list is not automatically a pile of money. 100 families may be waiting, but they could be waiting for the wrong age, the wrong start date, or the wrong schedule. Some joined 5 waitlists and will disappear the moment another center calls. A waitlist shows interest. It does not guarantee usable enrollment. And there is another hidden problem. Most centers are open much longer than one employee shift. Parents may need care from 6:30 in the morning until 6:30 at night. That is a 12-hour operating day. A teacher cannot legally or realistically work the entire span every day. So the center needs opening staff, closing staff, staggered schedules, lunch coverage, bathroom coverage, planning time, and backup for training or illness. Ratios do not pause because a teacher needs lunch. A room with exactly enough employees on the schedule is usually understaffed in real life. Someone will call out, someone's own child will get sick, an occupational plot twist that daycare workers experience with impressive efficiency. Someone will quit with little notice, someone will need mandatory training, and the center director cannot always solve the problem by walking into a classroom. The director is also handling tours, billing, schedules, inspections, incident reports, hiring, licensing files, and the occasional mystery bite mark. If the director covers a classroom all day, the administrative work waits until after closing. Now we can see where the tuition goes. Labor. A recent childcare business analysis found that most providers spend at least 60% of revenue on employee wages. Add payroll taxes, benefits, substitutes, overtime, and recruiting, and the total labor burden can move higher. Yet the median childcare worker earned only about $15. 41 won an hour in 2024. That sounds impossible. How can parents pay so much while teachers earn so little? Because both things can be true when the product requires many workers for a small number of customers. Suppose 4 infant families each pay $2,000 a month. That is $8,000 in monthly revenue. One teacher earning $18 an hour costs a little over $3,100 a month in base wages at full time. Add employer payroll costs, paid time off, training, and coverage. Then add the infant room's share of rent, utilities, food, supplies, insurance, administration, cleaning, equipment, and debt. The teacher can be underpaid while the room is still not wildly profitable. This is the brutal triangle at the center of daycare. Parents need the price to stay affordable. Workers need wages high enough to live on. Children need small enough groups and enough adults to remain safe and cared for. Without outside funding, unusually cheap space, or strong scale, it is very hard to maximize all three. Lower tuition squeezes wages and quality. Higher wages push tuition up. Looser ratios may lower cost, but they can increase the burden on each teacher and raise concerns about attention and safety. There is no secret app that changes a diaper at scale. Economists sometimes describe businesses like this with a concept called cost disease. It means some services do not become dramatically more productive over time. A factory can buy a machine that lets one worker make 10 times as many parts. A daycare cannot buy a machine that lets one teacher safely care for 10 times as many babies. The basic unit is still human attention, and human attention has not become 10 times cheaper. This also explains why staffing shortages are so destructive. A normal business can be short one worker and run a little slower. A daycare can be short one worker and lose the legal ability to open a room. If an infant teacher quits, the center may need to stop enrolling babies or ask several families to stay home until a replacement is found. Now revenue falls, but the rent stays. The director spends money advertising the job. Existing staff work harder. Parents become angry because the care they organized their entire work life around is suddenly uncertain. Some leave. Their siblings may leave too. The center has fewer children, but not necessarily few enough to reduce another full employee. So labor remains high while tuition falls. That is how one resignation can become a financial event. And keeping workers is difficult because the job is demanding. Childcare employees manage safety, behavior, diapers, food, cleaning, documentation, parent communication, early learning, and several hours of high-volume opinions from people who recently discovered elbows. Many can earn similar money elsewhere with less responsibility for human life. Turnover then creates more recruiting cost, weaker parent trust, and less stability for children. The center cannot simply solve this by doubling wages unless it can also raise tuition, receive subsidies, cut another expense, or accept lower profit. After labor comes the rest of the building: rent or mortgage, insurance, utilities, food, cleaning, supplies, curriculum, software, payment fees, payroll services, background checks, training, licensing, security, playground repairs, laundry, replacement toys. And toys in a daycare do not live gentle, dignified lives. They are dropped, chewed, thrown, painted, stepped on, argued over, and occasionally placed in a toilet for reasons that will remain outside the scope of this financial analysis. The building gets punished too. Doors and sinks run all day. Bathrooms need relentless cleaning. Furniture wears out. A broken air conditioner cannot wait a week when dozens of young children are inside. Insurance is especially important because the center is caring for the most valuable thing its customers have. A serious injury, allegation, security failure, licensing violation, or transportation incident can create legal costs, higher premiums, lost enrollment, and damage to the center's reputation all at once. A restaurant can survive a few bad online reviews. A daycare can be destroyed by one story parents do not feel safe ignoring. Now let us put rough numbers around a fictional center. These are not national averages. They are a simple model to show the mechanics. Imagine a licensed center with 60 slots in a moderately expensive market. At full enrollment, the average tuition across infants, toddlers, and preschoolers is $1,450 a month. That produces $87,000 in monthly tuition. It looks fantastic. But families move, children age out, start dates fail to line up, and rooms sometimes wait for teachers. At 90% enrollment, monthly tuition falls to about $78,000. Now suppose wages consume roughly 60%, that is almost $47,000. The building and occupancy costs take $10,000. Food, classroom supplies, and cleaning take $6,000. Insurance, utilities, software, administration, and professional services take another $8,000. Repairs, recruiting, marketing, training, bad debt, and other costs take $4,000. Now the center has roughly $3,000 left before taxes, major capital expenses, loan principal, and any true return to the owner. And even that can be misleading. If the owner works full-time as the director, part of the owner's income is really a salary for doing a job. It is not passive profit. Replace the owner with a hired director, and much of the apparent profit may disappear. Then one air conditioning failure costs $12,000. One underfilled classroom lasts 3 months. 2 employees leave. A parent falls behind on tuition. The center can collect more than $900,000 in a year and still end it wondering why the checking account looks emotionally unavailable. Now reduce enrollment to 75%. Revenue drops sharply, but labor does not. Each open room still needs minimum coverage across the full day. The director, rent, insurance, cleaning, and software remain. Food may fall slightly, but most large bills do not. Vacancy is expensive in almost every business. In daycare, vacancy is worse because it can be trapped inside the wrong classroom. This is the same reason infant tuition is usually higher. Babies do not take up dramatically more floor space than preschoolers. They require more adults. An infant room may collect more per child and still produce less margin than a full preschool room because the adult-to-child ratio is tighter. Parents see the higher price and assume the center loves babies financially. The spreadsheet may have a more complicated relationship with them. At this point, another question appears. If parents are desperate for care and prices are already high, why do so many areas still have shortages? Why does supply not rush in? Because the demand is real, but the amount families can pay has a ceiling. A family does not compare daycare only with other daycares. It compares daycare with one parent reducing work, changing shifts, relying on grandparents, hiring a nanny with another family, or leaving the workforce entirely. Raise tuition too far, and the customer may not choose a competitor. The customer may exit the market. That caps revenue even when the service is essential. The timing makes the problem worse. Families face their largest childcare bills during a short period when they may also have mortgages, student loans, less savings, parental leave, and interrupted careers. The benefits can last for years and help employers keep workers. But the bill lands on one family right now. The daycare cannot charge the parent's future employer for the skills that child may build. It cannot charge the government later because the parent remained in the workforce today. It mostly charges 2 tired adults on the first of the month. That is why economists call the child care market structurally difficult. The service creates value far beyond the person writing the check, but the provider captures only the tuition. The family sees a painful expense. The teacher sees a low wage. The owner sees a narrow margin. The rest of the economy quietly receives the benefit. Larger chains have ways to improve the equation. They can centralize billing, marketing, purchasing, training, legal work, and recruiting. They can negotiate better contracts, build substitute pools, study enrollment, and spread one weak center across a larger portfolio. They may also win employer contracts and use a recognizable brand to fill slots faster. Scale matters. But scale does not repeal ratios. A national chain still needs an adult in the infant room. It still needs a licensed building. It still loses revenue when a classroom cannot open. The back office becomes more efficient. The actual care remains stubbornly local. That helps explain why the industry is still dominated by small businesses. An SBA analysis found that small firms historically represented about 9% of childcare firms. The giant chains are visible. The market is still full of single location centers, nonprofits, church-affiliated programs, and home-based providers. Some of those providers survive because they have an advantage that does not appear on a normal income statement. A church may offer cheap space. A nonprofit may receive grants. A public program may support pre-K. An employer may pay part of the cost. A home provider may not charge the business market rent. Those are subsidies, even when nobody calls them subsidies. They fill the gap between what care costs and what parents can pay. Home daycare has its own version of the math. The provider avoids a commercial lease and may use little outside staff. But capacity is limited, and the owner's labor is hidden inside the profit. What remains after expenses also pays for the owner's 10 or 12-hour days, after hours cleaning, bookkeeping, shopping, parent communication, and the loss of private space. The profit is partly a wage, sometimes mostly a wage. This distinction matters in every daycare. An owner can make a good living by operating efficiently and working inside the business. That is different from owning an asset that produces money while someone else runs it. Daycare is not passive real estate with children added. It is an operating company wearing a building as a costume. Now imagine how a center actually begins to fail, not with an empty waitlist, with one teacher leaving. The center cannot replace her quickly, so it closes 4 infant spots. At $2,000 each, that is $8,000 in monthly revenue gone. One affected family has an older child in the preschool room and moves both children to another center. Now the preschool room has an opening too. The remaining infant teachers work harder and begin interviewing elsewhere. The owner raises tuition to improve wages and cover the missing revenue. 2 more families decide the new price no longer makes sense. The center cuts an assistant's hours. Tours become harder because rooms look understaffed, and existing parents sound frustrated in the parking lot. Online reviews turn, enrollment falls, but the fixed bills do not. The owner delays replacing equipment. The center feels older. More families choose the newer competitor down the road. Nothing dramatic happened on one specific day. The business lost balance. Each problem made the next problem easier. That is the daycare death spiral. And there is a mirror image version that works. A well-run center begins with a location parents can reach easily. It opens rooms in a deliberate order, uses deposits and firm start dates, and tracks occupancy by classroom. It knows where the next ratio cliff sits. It keeps floating coverage for breaks and callouts, pays reliably, retains good teachers, automates billing, maintains the building, and communicates constantly with parents. And it charges enough to run safely, even when that price feels uncomfortable. The strongest centers are not really selling supervision. They are selling reliability. A parent needs to believe that the doors will open tomorrow, the teacher will recognize their child, the room will be safe, and a normal workday will remain possible. That trust is the moat. Fancy cameras can help, a new playground can help, an elaborate curriculum can help, but the product parents value most is not having their life collapse at 7:02 in the morning. So does owning a daycare work as a business? Yes, under the right conditions. A strong center can produce steady monthly revenue, build deep loyalty, maintain long wait lists, and become extremely valuable in a growing community. An owner who understands classroom level occupancy, keeps staff, controls real estate costs, builds trust, and uses employer or public funding where available can create a durable company. Multiple locations can improve purchasing, administration, recruiting, and risk sharing. A home provider can build a solid self-employed income with lower overhead. But the bad version is equally real. The owner signs an expensive lease, underestimates the time needed to open, hires too early, fills the wrong age groups, loses 2 teachers, and discovers that 85% occupancy is not enough when every room is sitting on the wrong side of a ratio cliff. Tuition looks enormous from the outside. Inside, it is divided among a surprising number of adults and fixed costs before it ever becomes profit. That is the central paradox. Daycare is expensive because it uses so much human labor. Workers are underpaid because families cannot absorb the full cost of better wages. Owners struggle because lowering quality or staffing is not a legitimate solution. The business is squeezed from all three sides. Owning a daycare can make money, but it is not a money printer. It is a scheduling company, a school, a food operation, a cleaning service, a regulated facility, an HR department, and a daily exercise in keeping tiny people from testing gravity. The building is not the business. The toys are not the business. Even the tuition is not the business. The business is a carefully balanced supply of human attention. Every family is paying to reserve a piece of it. Every regulation limits how thinly it can be divided. Every absent teacher reduces how much of it you can sell. And unlike software, real estate, or a factory line, human attention cannot be copied, automated, or produced in bulk. That is why the price feels high, that is why the wages feel low, and that is where all the money goes.